Hi, this is Ellen Brock, freelance editor. This is the second video in my adaptation of my blog series Novel Bootcamp. In the last video, we talked about how to write the first page to introduce your novel in a way that will grab the attention of agents and editors and readers. Today, I want to talk about how to introduce the main character. Now, if you've queried a little bit, you might have gotten some rejection letters that said that the agent or editor didn't connect with the main character. This is a really common problem, but there's typically a fairly straightforward reason for why people aren't connecting to the character, and it usually has to do with the way they're being introduced. One common mistake when introducing a main character is having the character be passive. There's a conflict going on, but the character isn't engaged in the conflict. They're watching it as an outsider. This creates a problem because the reader wants to be engaged in the story. They want to feel like they're right there in the battle. They're the ones handling the conflict. They want to relate to that main character and put themselves in that position. So if the main character is sitting on the sidelines and is sort of just observing a conflict that involves other characters, the reader will wish that they were reading the story from a different perspective. Even the antagonistic perspective is more interesting than the perspective of someone on the sidelines. A second common mistake that people make is they introduce their main character by having them complain. They talk about what's wrong with their lives, all the problems they have, why everything is unfair, and why they're so unhappy. But it's really hard to connect to a character who's a big complainer. We don't really like reading about people who whine. We're more attracted to people who are strong and pull themselves up and handle their problems. Another common problem is introducing the main character by having them sort of sitting around thinking about things. A lot of the time when this happens, the character is drinking coffee or eating a meal or gazing out the window, sometimes smoking a cigarette or drinking. They're sort of just sitting, they're not doing anything, they're not engaged in a conflict, they're probably not even necessarily engaged in a conversation, and they're just sort of thinking. Usually they're thinking about things that the author wants to convey to the reader, such as what they look like, problems they have in their lives, their past, personality traits. There's a variety of things they could be thinking about. This leads into the next issue, which is a character that spends too much time thinking about the past. Or it could be that the narrator spends too much time narrating about the past. There's all this information about what happened to the character before the start of the story. This isn't very engaging because the reader wants to be thrown into the midst of a conflict. They want to be drawn into this interesting story. And though the backstory is important, it's hard for the reader to care about that backstory before they've made an investment in the character. So when first introducing your character, it's best to hold off on the backstory and show them engaged in an interesting conflict. So now that we've discussed how not to introduce your main character, let's talk about the best way to introduce them. The main thing to keep in mind is that you want the reader to feel that this is this character's story. You want there to be no doubt in the reader's mind that this character is the main character, that they have a great and interesting story, and that that story is worth telling and worth reading about. This means that the character needs to be introduced as they're engaging in a conflict. There should be something wrong, something that's going against the character, and there should be something very clear that the character wants, that they're trying to achieve. It doesn't matter if they actually achieve it or not. The reader just needs to see that they're trying, that they're proactive, and that this is going to be a character who can really handle carrying a story and that will be interesting to read about from the beginning to the end. It's also a really good idea to introduce the best and worst personality traits of your character. The best trait should just be something that's going to help them along through the journey, something that's going to be an asset. Introducing their negative trait makes the character feel real and more easy to identify with. And this negative trait should be something that the character will overcome over the course of the book. It's usually an element of their character arc that they will either embrace this thing, maybe it's not really a flaw but they believe that it is, or maybe it is a flaw and they correct it over the course of the novel. I hope this video helped you create a great introduction for your character, and I'll be back with the third installment of the Novel Bootcamp series soon. Thanks for watching.